Ladies and gentlemen, we have a brand new social media company to join in the great race to the bottom of wokeness in the form of Yelp here today, as they are going to start adding racist tags accusing restaurants of being racist based on customer reviews. That's not going to get abused out of spite and rage. Not one bit, not one single bit. Now, I've got the official blog post up here. This is straight from the mouth of Yelp. And this is just another instance of these social media giants that are trying to appease a public consensus that does not have the majority's best interest in their mind. Now, listen, all of these companies just kind of cull their opinions off of Twitter and whatever university they graduated out of with their fine arts degree. It's gotten to a point where there's so many of them, even though there might be, how many fine arts, gender studies, lesbian dance theory graduates are there really out there? But at the point where it starts to reach even if it is a tenth of a percent of the United States population, 1%, that's right now at this point, 3.3 million people would be 1% of the population. Doesn't matter which way you slice it, that is a lot of fucking people, and they are disproportionately active on social media and are normally the loudest people out there. I don't need to pull up a source for that. You guys have a set of eyes and you know how to do at least a little bit of cursory reading to realize that the negative comments that you might get on any platform that you frequent are normally of short description and use a bunch of different jumbled words that I need not list in extensive fashion to prove that these people are the loudest detractors to which they purport to have solutions for. Like, here's what you hear from these intersectionalists out there. You always hear how they are standing up for oppressed minorities, but in actuality they are just looking for a rejuvenation of segregation. Don't believe me? Look at what Michigan University, the Dearborn campus, did with their non-POC and POC virtual cafe events, where, oh no, even if you are a biracial, intersectional person of color or whatever the fuck BIPOC means this week, you can still go into the whites only virtual cafe and participate there, but this is supposed to be for white people to discuss how being white in today's society is. And this is all brought to you in part by these human resources departments that are completely taken over by intersectionalist, postmodern, neo-Marxist ideas. Geez, now I'm sounding like a word salad seller. But let's get into this blog post here. Now, this just dropped yesterday, and it should be making a bigger stir, but it makes an appeal to the mainstream media out there, so this is just going to get pushed along to the side. Now, I also grant you I've never used Yelp for anything in my life, and while personally it's not going to take a giant toll on me personally, but that's how all of these things start. It's always a slippery slope. So here we go. At Yelp, we value diversity, inclusion, and belonging, both internally and on our platform, which means we have a zero tolerance policy to racism. We know these values are important to our users, and now more than ever, consumers are increasingly conscious of the types of businesses they patronize and support. In fact, we've seen that reviews mentioning black-owned businesses were up more than 617% this summer compared to last summer. Support for women-owned businesses has also increased, with review mention up 114% in that same time period. Whoop-de-fucking-do. I'd like to see the proportion of those businesses actually aggregated throughout the entire Yelp catalog. Like, what does this actually make up? Are we talking about some insignificant portions where a few more, like a handful of reviews, are going to translate to 100% over a year time period? Like, I'd like to see some statistics, but of course this is just a blog post and they're going to cherry pick the numbers that do them the most benefit. Over the summer, Yelp rolled out a number of initiatives to help users find and support black-owned businesses. We partnered with My Black Receipt on the launch of a black-owned business attribute and joined the 15% pledge to further amplify black-owned businesses. And here's the 15% pledge. This is their homepage. Black people in the US make up nearly 15% of the population. So we are calling for major retailers to commit to a minimum of a 15% on their shelves to be black-owned businesses. Their petition's getting off to a rip-roaring start. This is a disgusting level of equality of outcome in action. You've heard me quote Dr. Jordan Peterson several times on many of my videos. In fact, 2 of them currently are directed solely based on his teachings, and opportunity of outcome is a far better solution, but this is the equality doctrine run amok. What you're taking is 2 non-relatable values and trying to force it in there under the if you don't do this you're a racist moniker. Now 15% of the population is black. Yes, we understand that based on empirical census information. Now how many black owned businesses are there? They're just once again just shoving it in there under the auspices of equality. No, that doesn't fly. That really doesn't fly, guys. Why does it have to stop at black-owned businesses? Why can't it be Latino businesses as well? What about Asians? What about Jews? Oh, but Asians and Jews are too successful, therefore they're categorized as white. Yeah, go figure. It's always whatever suits their ends. It's never about actually true equality of opportunity. So let's get to the meat of the matter. This is right here going to be the new tag that they're going to put on businesses accused of racist behavior. So communities have always turned to Yelp in reaction to current events at a local level as the nation reckons with issues of systemic racism. Sure, stop just implying this shit. I'm sick and tired of any of these articles, any of these blog posts from these corporations that claim to be for the little guy, when in reality all they're doing is just trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator by using the buzzword of the week. Remember when this was probably what, mid to late 2000s, everything was about, oh, we support LGB, whatever it stopped at the time, LGBT. That seemed to be the longest running one, all the way up to the SCOTUS ruling on same-sex marriages, and then guess what, they'll just have to pick up any other cause of the day. And right now, systemic racism has replaced all of those old badges, but we'll continue. We've seen in the last few months that there is a clear need to warn consumers about businesses associated with egregious, racially charged actions to help people make more informed spending decisions. Well, you know what? I don't work for Yelp, but I can set up Dawn's, and Dawn's will tell you to not go to anywhere in California if they do a certain repeal during the general election, if they get rid of civil rights legislation by repealing the law in which it is illegal for the federal government to discriminate based on race. That's a real thing, and I've showed it before. Yelp's user operations team already places alerts on businesses when we notice a unusual uptick in reviews that are based on what someone may have seen in the news or on social media, rather than on a first-hand experience with the business. Now, when a business gains public attention for reports of racist conduct, such as using racist language or symbols, oh boy, Yelp will place a new business accused of racist behavior alert on their Yelp page to inform users, along with a link to a news article where they can learn more about the incident. So there's quite a bit to unpack here. What do they mean by racist language and symbols? That can really be interpreted by anybody or anything. Does that mean it's going to get extrapolated out to, say, not using somebody's preferred pronouns? Or do you think anybody's going to get a racist behavior sticker for saying cracker to somebody? I don't think so. And symbols. What do they mean by racist symbols? Like, okay hand signal? Or if somebody's reaching up to the top shelf to grab say a coffee cup, and all of a sudden they put their arm up like that, is somebody going to take a picture and accuse them of hailing Hitler? I don't know. And how many reports do you need until you get this sticker? And by news article, are they going to source a social media post? Are they going to have to source a reputable media outlet? There's a lot of vague weasel words in this statement here. It's not clear, and everybody and their mother knows that this is going to get abused like nobody's business. So I've got an article pulled up about Section 230 here. And what this does is both a blessing and a curse. Right now, I'm allowed to speak on platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Parler, with relatively no impunity. My free speech is out there for everyone to enjoy or criticize, regardless of which stance you take. And it gets abused by these companies as well, by silencing only one side of the aisle, look no further than Twitter and Facebook, while allowing the other side, like, oh, I don't know how many Antifa pages are still up on Twitter where they publicly organize different violent riots that they're going to be holding in different cities, defended by these tech giants under the auspices of, oh, my Section 230. And not that long ago, I think about a week ago, but time moves so quickly on the internet that it's not possible to really nail anything down properly. President Trump, oh, he loves to tweet, and one thing that he tweeted was, get rid of Section 230. Now that sounds good, because what the tech giants are doing is censoring conservative side of the aisle and letting the extreme leftists run free. But instead of deleting it, it needs to be tweaked. It needs to be tweaked so that the only speech that gets banned, or the only speech that these publishers, well, in all intents and purposes they are publishers, have to take down are United States regulated illegal speech, media in general, and everything else has to stay up and can't be taken down by the companies. So let's get into Section 230. It says, no provider or user or an interactive computer service shall be treated as a publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. In other words, online intermediaries that host or republish speech are protected against a range of laws that might otherwise be used to hold them legally responsible for what others say and do. The protected intermediaries included not only regular internet service providers, but also a range of interactive computer service providers, including basically any online service that publishes third-party content, through an important exceptions for certain criminal and intellectual property-based claims. CDA 230 creates a broad protection that has allowed innovative and free speech online to flourish, and is being taken advantage of. Because instead of having to have an editor on staff like the major publications out there, like your traditional media sources is what I mean. YouTube, Facebook, blah, 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 all the social media platforms can allow their users to just post up whatever they want because they don't publish anything that their users post. Now this Section 230 was originally written in 1996, and how many of those previously mentioned integral parts of today's society, like it or not, were around in 96. That many right there. And I already threw it up there earlier, so don't bother clipping that. So this breakdown here's pretty good. Here's what else it says. This legal and policy framework has allowed for YouTube and Vimeo users to upload their own videos, Amazon and Yelp to offer countless user reviews, Craigslist to hold classified ads, and YouTube and Twitter to offer social networking to hundreds of millions of internet users. Given the sheer size of user-generated websites, for example, Facebook alone has more than 1 billion users, and YouTube users upload 100 hours of video every minute. I'm a part of that. It would be infeasible for online intermediaries to prevent objectionable content from cropping up on their site. Rather than face potential liability for their users' actions, most would likely not host any user content at all, or would need to protect themselves by being actively engaged in censoring what we say, what we see, or what we do online. In short, CDA 230 is perhaps the most influential law to protect the kind of innovation that has allowed the internet to thrive since '96. And that's why it needs tweaking. Because it is from 96, it did not foresee the explosive rise of all of these social media platforms. I don't want to have my channel taken down one day out of the blue. What I'm trying to do here is parse out the horseshit from what you're being fed every single day. And there are a lot more famous individuals out there right now that have their content demonetized or simply just stricken from the record at the whims of these non-publishers. Reform it so that the only thing that has to be taken down are pieces of media showing graphic, legitimate violence, not movie clips or anything. Stop abuses of copyright claims. Have a clear and legitimate definition of what describes fair use online. Because I understand just posting an entire movie out there for free when you don't own it is something totally different than, I don't know, commenting over some clips. Like a dashing young gentleman did with a vice presidential debate, say, yesterday. and still allowing those, well, they would become publishers. Just call them what they are. Would not be held legally accountable for what happens. Just set up the frameworks and let everybody play equally in the sandbox. So don't get rid of 230 unless you're going to repeal and replace it like President Trump promises to do with Obamacare, which nobody wants to hear about. But with all the careful cultivation of what's going on with speech right now on these social media platforms leads to what many have called as a morality policing or a morality police state, whereas defined would be one side of the aisle has preferential treatment over the other, and we are governed in accordance with, leftist ideas, where you have to bend the knee to social causes like Black Lives Matter, otherwise you will get unfairly accused of crimes like how there was a man in Canada who was being harassed by a mob of people, and the cops decided that it was easier to just arrest the one guy than to deal with the mob, so they took him out of there. I don't know if he was charged with anything or if it was just the easiest way the cops believed at the time would be to de-escalate the situation. But that's a scary future, morality policing. I don't hold any of those leftist ideas. I think that they're all asinine and fucking bonkers. But you see people at the top of the slippery slope. Hence why white gun-wielding St. Louis couple reportedly indicted by grand jury. Y'all remember the McCloskeys? When Black Lives Matter broke into their gated community, can't forget that part. They won't tell you that. It'd just be peaceful protesters were in their neighborhood. No, they smashed a gate in order to get into their neighborhood. And actually, it was to get to one of the city council members that lived on the same block as they did. They took a rifle, and Mark McCloskey had his rifle improperly held in his arms. And Patricia there had the handgun in her hand. I was going to say firearm, but that's redundant. And when the peaceful protesters were getting awfully close to their rather beautiful home, to be completely honest, they came out on the front porch and encouraged them not to come any closer, as Missouri is a castle doctrine state, and they have the absolute right to protect their property as they see fit. And also another little point to be made here is that, in fact, these two are lawyers, and they were using the previously mentioned firearms in a case that they were working on, and they had made them incapable of firing by reversing the spring and the firing pin. And once they were improperly seized by the government, or the police department in Missouri to be more specific, they so conveniently, I would imagine as a little bit of a gift for being so cooperative, reversed the spring and firing pin in order to make them functional firearms, in order to strengthen their case. That's definitely not evidence tampering or anything. So what does woke PR have to say about this? Mark and Patricia McCloskey, the white St. Louis couple charged in July with brandishing weapons at protesters who marched through their gated community, have been indicted by a grand jury, the Associated Press has reported. Now okay, here's just a little bit of information that will help you parse through whether or not a source is to be taken seriously or not. What does being white have to do with anything in this situation? If you're going to start identifying people by their race, you should also be saying that the protesters who had ill intent were mostly black. Why not put that in there if you're starting to differentiate people based on race? Whenever you see that, you know that the author of the article is ideologically driven. Just a little heads up for you. Their lawyer, Joel Schwartz, don't need to point out how you'd categorize that fellow, told NPR he learned of the indictment from a variety of reports, but has not yet been contacted by the prosecutor in the case, nor have the legal documents been filed in the court database. Charges stem from a confrontation between the McCloskeys and the couple, who are both personal injury attorneys and have a history of litigation with their neighbors, and a group of mostly black There we go. Oh, it took, a half dozen paragraphs in order to get to that. As you can see, ideologically in there, because most people don't read past the first paragraph. But I do the work for you so you don't have to. The demonstrators entered the wealthy enclave en route. What does that have to do with anything? Wealthy enclave. Oh, you shouldn't feel bad for these people who are being unfairly prosecuted because they have wealth, and people who have wealth are inherently evil, right? Wrong. Wrong, because Kimberly Gardner is the circuit attorney on this case, and she was responsible for repairing the McCloskey's weapon in the most charitable way you can put it. So yeah, that is the morality police state. And like I said, hey, this is only one instance, but one instance quickly turns into a second instance, and then they just keep growing in scope and specter. And that's why we need Section 230 reform. And that's what makes these Yelp racist reviews so pernicious, because if it starts on Yelp, how long before it starts going to Facebook, where they start tagging individuals' pages with, oh, this person's a racist or a transphobe, or on Twitter, where instead of a blue check mark, you have a red check mark next to your name if you say xenophobic things, or however they want to categorize it. So that's what I see for our future if we don't do something about it, and I want you all to be aware, and that's the entire point of this video, and I definitely thank you for your time. I feel this is an important topic that not many people are connecting the threads on, but that's the hope I have for this channel, is to dig a little bit deeper than your average news reader and give you something insightful to think about. And I thank you again for the gift of your time, and I've been Don Consuelo, and I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.